Hey guys, this is Cobus. Today I want to show you another kind of sweep-esque little pattern that I like to use. I've explained a hurted sweep, I've explained a double stroke sweep between the toms, and this is another lesson kind of in that vein. It's a sweep between the ride and the snare, and just as all the other ones, it's really simple. In essence, it's based on something that every drummer should be able to do, and what I'm doing with that is I'm just kind of twisting it in a small way to give it a small little kind of different edge. And so, like I said, it's based on something super simple, and what it is based on is just a double stroke roll. Right, right, left, left, repeat. That's pretty much what it's based on. So obviously this goes without saying, but every drummer should be able to play a nice clean double stroke roll. Maybe I shouldn't say that as loudly and on camera as I just did, because I don't know how clean my double stroke rolls are, but it is something that I have been working on, I promise. But in working on this technique and on the double stroke roll, I started kind of messing around with the kit because I love the sweeps. I don't know why I enjoy them so much. And I think that one of the main reasons why I like the sweeps is because it's difficult. Like it's difficult to extend the distance that you're trying to go in a space of time. So if I'm sweeping in between the toms and the snare, then it's more difficult than just doing this. You know, like doing this is more difficult than just doing this. And I figure if you're able to do the more difficult things, then the easier things would be much easier to do much better. So I try to kind of push myself when I practice, and this is one of the reasons why I started messing around with the sweep. And so like I said, it's based on double stroke roll, super simple. The double stroke roll just played on the snare sounds like this. And so that's the pattern. And then what I do with my right hand is the two notes that I'm playing with my right hand is going ride, snare. That's all it is. So instead of going snare, 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 I'm going ride, snare, 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 ride, snare, 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 ride, snare, snare, snare. So it's really simple. It's exactly the same pattern. But like I said, what I started doing was I went, how can I make this more difficult for myself? How can I force my hands to be more relaxed and more fluid? And what I came up with long ago was the notion of then extending the distance. So if I want to sweep between the toms and the snare, then obviously I have to be more relaxed, because otherwise this will become really difficult to do. And so what I started forcing myself to do was to kind of go to further out on the kit than just staying on the snare. And so that's exactly why I started doing this. So in order to do this, your right hand needs to be really relaxed. Like you can't grip the stick like a caveman. You can't even like grip it tightly, even if your normal kind of loose grip. You can't like squeeze on the stick. It needs to be really smooth and fluid, and you need to have a nice relaxed grip on the stick if you want to travel this distance at that speed. And so that's what I kind of started doing with regards to that. And you'll see when I do this motion, what is happening with my hand, it's this circular motion, especially from that angle. Like you'll see if I'm doing this double stroke sweep, what's happening with my right hand is I'm doing this kind of circular motion, because it needs to be one motion. It can't be ride, snare, okay, now I'm going to go back to the ride, snare, back to the ride. That's so much more tedious than just having a circle that continues. And that's just how my head works, and I think that's just how the human body works. Like you want to streamline that motion, you want to get it to be less energy consumption, more energy efficient, and just simpler to execute. And so what I came up with, like I said, was just to split up that right hand double stroke. Instead of going snare, snare, I'm just going ride, snare. And as you might have heard in the intro, what I do with the kick is I just accent that note on the ride with the kick. So it just gives it more definition. Otherwise, it sounds like there's an empty hole, especially because the ride isn't as loud as the snare. So what I do is I just do exactly what I just explained. Ride, snare, 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 ride, snare, snare, snare. But I just hit the kick on every single ride stroke. So I'm going to start at a kind of fast-ish tempo, and then I'll just slow it down as slow as I can get it without losing complete control. And I'll play the pattern just as I played it in the intro, with including the kick. And then I'll just try and slow it down so you can see kind of what that motion looks like and why I started doing this in the first place, which is to relax my right hand. So this is what the pattern looks like at regular speed and then slow down. So you'll see, like I said, in essence, this is super simple, just based on the double stroke roll. What I would advise, if you kind of want to start dabbling with stuff like this and kind of start pushing yourself, I'm not saying this is so ridiculously difficult that you have to push yourself really hard, but for me, this was outside of my comfort zone when I started going in this direction. And if you want to start doing that, what I can advise is start doing that with your left hand, which I'm working on, but I'm not going to put that on video because I still suck at it. But I've started dabbling with doing exactly the same pattern, but like splitting up both hands between whatever else I want to hit and the snare drum, always coming back to the snare drum. That's kind of what I'm working on now. And another thing, that's the one thing you can do, start using your left hand. And another thing that you can do is go further. So obviously this distance makes it quite tricky, especially if you're trying to hit the middle of the snare drum on every iteration. But what you can start doing is going further away from the snare with regards to maybe hitting a crash, like that, or doing the double stroke sweep with regards to the tom that I've explained in a previous lesson. But like I said, if you want to push yourself and really make yourself more comfortable with the difficult stuff so that the easy stuff becomes easier, then push yourself harder. Go further and get more uncomfortable, in which in this case would probably mean going further away from the snare. So just to play you guys out, I'll just kind of see if I can maybe do the sweep between the crash and the snare and still hit the middle of the snare and still keep it smooth. But otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next lesson.